Today, we're going to address the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips, the RSCS, or the 6-0s. Formed in the 1970s from the gang's foundation, they've had a reputation for being the most notorious gang to come out of Los Angeles, California. Yeah, from daily gang wars with several gangs, including the most widely known one in the city with the Trey gangster Crips, infamous members like Lil Fee, bank robbers, and internal assassinations, this gang definitely has a story to tell. But before we get into this gang's insane history, let me get a like and subscribe if you hustle today and got some money, like a lot of this gang's prominent members are known for. Yeah. All right. Welcome to Cali's Most Dangerous. Let's get into it.
We can walk into a place and that'll make people fearful just knowing that it's rolling 60.
The name itself.
And what it carries behind it.
Like
what does it carry behind it?
It carries dirt, carries murder, carries whatever you want.
Treachery. Just pure treachery.
Nightmare.
At about midnight, Andrew Taylor was walking near Arco gas station on the corner of Crenshaw Boulevard and Slauson Avenue in Los Angeles, California, which is a known hangout for the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips. While walking, Taylor noticed that about 12 to 13 vehicles had pulled into the gas station and seen about 40 to 50 people get out of their vehicles and began throwing up gang signs. After that, Albert Edward Hamler and Joseph Michael Cray, who were known Rollin 60 Crip members, and another member approached Taylor. The other person put his hand inside Taylor's pocket and began to take out Taylor's cell phone. So Taylor placed his hand over his pocket to prevent him from doing so. In the midst of all that, Cray grabbed Taylor's shirt and asked him where he was from. Taylor realized Cray was asking him to identify what gang he belonged to. So Taylor replied, nowhere. Then Cray said, take this nigga shit, which Taylor interpreted as someone to take his belongings. Cray then said, Rollin 60 Crips, nigga, and punched Taylor in the face. After the punch, Taylor fell backwards into a car, and when he got up, he saw 5 people rushing towards him. Once close enough, the men began to punch Taylor in the face. After that, he falls to the ground and begins to get stumped out and kicked out by the other members. Taylor stood up and started to run, but someone threw Taylor to the ground where he received more kicks to the body and face. In a final attempt to escape, Taylor stood up and ran into the street. But once again, he was attacked and forced into the ground, where he received more kicks to the face and the arms. While Taylor was laying face down on the ground, someone went through his pockets and removed his cell phone as well as his wallet. A person then yelled, shoot that nigga. After that, Taylor heard 4 gunshots and saw blood on his face and his arms leaking out. At the time of the trial, Taylor still had 12 bullet fragments in his body. After the shooting, Hamler was interrogated by police. He stated as follows. Hamler drove from a party to the gasoline station. At the station, he claimed he was just hanging out with the other Rollin 60 Crip members, smoking and drinking. Hamler had been a member of the Rollin 60s for 6 to 7 years. On that night, Hamler said he saw a lot of people in one area, and it looked like they was whooping Tyler's ass. Taylor ran away, and Hamler, who was just caught the moment he claimed, chased after him. Taylor fell to the ground in the middle of the street. That's when Hamler ran over to Taylor and shot him 5 to 6 times in the back from a distance of about 4 to 5 feet. Officer Ross testified as an expert in the criminal street gangs. According to Ross, the primary activities of the Rollin 60 Crips include robberies and shootings that frequently resulted in death. Ross opined that if a victim resisted robbery committed by the Rollin 60 Crip gang members, the situation could escalate into a more violent encounter involving the display of a firearm. Ross explained that respect is very important amongst gang members, and a victim who resists a robbery is showing extreme disrespect. Ross further opined that the beating and shooting of Taylor benefited the Rollin 60 Crips because it enhanced the gang's reputation for violence. It also benefited the participating gang members by enhancing their reputation for violence as well. The way you get more respect in this gang is you commit more violent crimes. The more violent crimes you commit, the more you move up, and the more you get respect, said the officer. Ultimately, Albert Edward Hamler and Joseph Michael Cray received identical sentences. For the attempted murder, they were sentenced to life imprisonment plus 25 years to life for the firearm enhancement. And for the robbery, they were sentenced to a consecutive term of 3 years plus 10 years for the gang enhancement plus 25 years to life for the firearm enhancement. That story was just to give an insight on how ruthless this gang was and still is today, especially if you're in their territory. And believe me when I say, that story right there It only scratches the surface of the nature of the Rollin 60 Crips. Let's get into who these guys are first though, as we continue to address some more stories and headlines. Who are the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips?
And the only thing they hear is rolling 60s, because that's where it's at. You know what I'm saying? That's where it's at. It can't stop us. I mean, another person is being born every day. Don't you know the other person is a Crip? He's coming up as a Crip. That's the first thing that come out of his mouth is rolling 60s. There's kids now, you go down Grindhurst talking about, I want to see a rolling 60. That's all they know. They know rolling 60s, but they know schoolwork.
The West Side Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips, or the RSCS, are a predominantly African-American street gang in the Hyde Park area of South Los Angeles, California. And they maintain their area with the iron fist, frontlining and patrolling almost daily. Matter of fact, they're believed to be one of the most infamous and fierce black gangs in the Hyde Park, Crenshaw region of Los Angeles. Their territory stretches from Slauson Avenue to Florence Avenue, between Western Avenue around Crenshaw Boulevard. When it comes to races, like I already mentioned, they're predominantly an African-American gang, but they pretty much have every race from the hood. It's Mexicans, Samoans, Asians, even a few whites. Yet the 60s is not racist. That shit is tasteless. You just gotta be with the action. Only the most ruthless can make it. Bars, nigga. Nah, this all makes sense though, because they're among one of the largest geographically and numbers-wise when it comes to the other several hundred gangs in the Los Angeles area. The Rollin 60 Crips are composed of several cliques, such as the Avenues, Front Hood, Overhills, Dorset Village clique, and a few other cliques as well. And with so many cliques, and being geographically one of the biggest street gangs in Los Angeles, the Rollin 60 Crips are known to have deadly internal issues as well. Yeah, it's alleged that members of the Rollin 60 Crips are known to murder each other to gain respect and prestige. It's also alleged that the 60s have a slogan related to in-house murders. You're not really a true Rollin 60 Crip until you kill a Rollin 60 Crip gang member. Wayne Densmore Gray was a member of the Rollin 60s. Campbell was also a member of the Rollin 60 Crips. In September of 2008, Gray was involved in a fight with Campbell in the presence of a famous rapper and other Rollin 60 Crip gang members. During the fight, Campbell struck Gray in a blindsided shot and cut his eye. Gray suffered from a black eye because of this. On October 6th of 2008, Gray asked Pellicker, a fellow Rollin 60 Crip member, to help him kill Campbell, and Pellicker agreed. Later that night, they found Campbell sleeping in a parked car with Watson on 63rd and Crenshaw Boulevard in the Rollin 60 Crips territory. Pellicker then put his car next to Campbell's white Mercedes. Shortly after, Gray got out of the car and shot Campbell and Watson several times before returning to the car and having Pellicker drive away. When LAPD officer Thomas Collin arrived at the scene, he saw the white Mercedes windows had been shot out, with Campbell's and Watson's body on the inside. They both have been shot in the head. The police recovered 11 .40 caliber casings and an expended bullet. A gang expert opined that a hypothetical crime based on the facts of Campbell's and Watson's murder were committed for the benefit of or the direction and association with the Rollin 60 Crips. Campbell got the best of Gray in a fight, and Gray needed to retaliate. The killing raised Gray's status in the gang and benefited the gang by instilling fear and intimidation in the community. And that was just one or two of the bodies Gray got caught for. Another situation played out a few years later on June 2nd in 2013. Dorset Village is an apartment complex within the Rollin 60 Crips territory. In June of 2016, 5 or 6 members of the gang lived in that apartment complex, including Gray, Wilson, and Payton. Wilson, Gray, and Payton were all members of the Dorset Village clique, a subset of the Rollin 60s. The clique claimed the Dorset Village as its territory. Westby lived in Dorset Village, but he was not a member of any gang. Wilson and Gray were real close, like father and son. On June 2nd of 2013, Wilson noticed that Gray looked irritated and asked Gray what was wrong. Gray stated that he was with 3 other individuals in the apartment manager's garage when Westby approached him. Shortly after, Gray and Westby got into an argument, so Gray told Westby to leave. He then claimed that Westby pulled out a gun and pointed it at him. Westby pulled the trigger, but the gun did not fire. Wilson tried to calm down Gray, but it was unsuccessful. Gray stated he was going to kill Westby. Payton arrived, and Gray devised a plan to murder Westby. Payton's role was to call Westby downstairs to the middle of the apartment complex. Wilson's role was to call Gray when Westby was on his way back to the back of the apartment complex. Wilson and Penny left Gray's apartment together. They walked towards a tree in the middle of Dorset Village. At some point, the two men separated, but Wilson heard Penny calling Westby down. Wilson then bought another Dorset Village resident's cell phone to call Gray. Gray asked what Westby was, and Wilson told him. 5 to 6 seconds after Gray hung up the phone, Wilson heard 67 rapid-fire gunshots. Brenda Dobbins, a neighbor in the Dorset Village, testified that she heard Penny calling out to Westby. Dobbins also testified that she heard gunshots, then saw Westby land on the ground. LAPD officer Jose Bonello arrived at the scene, and Westby was visually injured and taken to the hospital. He later died from his injuries. Shortly after the murders, Gray visited Karan Batty's apartment in the Dorset Village. Gray asked Batty for a drink, and Batty invited him inside. Batty gave Gray a glass of water. After that, Gray went into Batty's bedroom. 5 to 6 minutes later, Batty went into the bedroom and seen that Gray had been praying. Batty and Gray then had a conversation, during which in that conversation, Gray told Batty that he had murdered Westby and detailed how he committed the murder. Frances Campbell was in a dating relationship with Batty during this time. She testified that she was at Batty's residence on June 2nd of 2013 when Gray showed up, approximately 15 minutes after she heard gunshots. Gray walked into the apartment and went into Betty's bedroom. After a few minutes, Betty went into the bedroom. Betty told Frances Campbell that Gray had told him that he had killed a younger kid. Meanwhile, on October 16th of 2013, Pellicer was detained by police and placed in a jail cell with a confidential informant. Pellicer explained to the informant that he and Gray had murdered Campbell and Watson. Not only that, but he also admitted to getting rid of the gun used by Gray to murder Westby. On February 9th of 2017, Wilson reached a plea agreement. He agreed to the police and provided details of Westby's murder. At trial, he also testified that Gray admitted to killing Campbell and Watson and detailed the events surrounding Westby's murder. The trial court sentenced Gray to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus 100 years to life in state prison. Yeah, internal issues, unfortunately, are damn near common when you run into a big gang. And the Rollin 60 Crips, they're no exception at all. And these guys are deep too. Youth members mostly attended Crenshaw High School as well as Westchester High School, but police authorities believe in the Rollin 60 Crip membership is over 8,000 members strong, making them one of the largest gangs in Los Angeles. Yeah, try 60 if you want. It's a lot of them niggas. You might end up 6 feet under if it's smoke. Bars, nigga. Yeah, it's definitely a lot of Seattle Mariners attire being worn in that area, which is the logo that the gang has branded themselves with. Not only that, if you count the allegiances that they have with other gangs, they start to become a lot more deeper in terms of membership, but also twice as militant. When it comes to cars, they fall under the Rollin O's and the Neighborhood Crips umbrella, which means they have close ties to gangs like the East Coast Crips and all Rollin O members, from the 20s all the way up to the Rollin 100s. But don't let that fool you. These niggas definitely don't need any help holding their own in the streets and in prison. From the Tiny Lokes to the OGs, they have members of the gang who help maintain their reputation as one of the most dangerous and respected gangs in California. Yeah, this gang was the first to specialize in takeover bank robberies in the area, and with cash in hand, began calling itself the Rich Rollin 60s. Drug trafficking supplemented the robberies, while gang members engaged in homicides, assaults with deadly weapons, carjackings, vandalism, and general intimidation in the community. This is why the gang has had several gang injunctions placed on them.
From South LA, the Rolling 60s, however, decided to have their gang holiday here in Studio City at this rental club behind me called Platinum. Now, they decided to come here, I'm assuming, Sergeant Dan Horan, to stay away from people like yourself in South Los Angeles. However, you found them.
We found them. We got word that the Rolling 60s were having their, what we call their Hood Day party here at this club behind us. And myself and about 20 officers from the 77th Street Gang Detail came out here, and with cooperation from officers from North Hollywood Division, the Gang Detail, and patrol officers took action on the party.
Another injunction occurred in 2003. The city of Los Angeles filed a gang injunction against the Rollin 60 Crips, specifying that 31 men were members and associates of the Rollin 60s. In this particular raid though, some have suggested that the Rollin 60s were being fairly targeted, including individuals that had not had police contact in 14 years. This led up to a hearing in 2018. when a judge ruled that most gang members subject to gang injunctions in Los Angeles suffered due process violation, since the city did not give them the opportunity to challenge civil restraining orders in court. And Los Angeles has been barred from enforcing these restraining orders since 2018. And this was definitely a win for the community, because the cops, pigs, 12, the boys, and whatever else we use to refer to a peace officer in Los Angeles have always been corrupt. And there have been gangs in their ranks to this day. But the Rollin 60 Crips have always been ruthless though, I'm not gonna lie. And there's many headlines that justify that statement. But one that sticks out the most was the death of former football player Kermit Alexander's family.
Los Angeles police say the mother, sister, and 2 nephews of former National Football League star Kermit Alexander were shot dead in their home today. Witnesses said that 2 gunmen walked in the family bungalow and opened fire. They didn't say anything, said a 13-year-old boy who escaped by hiding in a closet. He said they just came in shooting. Alexander was a star halfback at UCLA, then played for San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Philadelphia in an 11-year professional career.
On August 31st, 1984, the police were summoned to a scene of horror at the Alexander house, where they found a bullet-riddled bodies of 57-year-old Deborah, her 23-year-old daughter, Ditria, and 2 of her grandsons, 8-year-old Damon Bonner and 10-year-old Damani Garner. Deborah, who had just gotten up that morning, was sitting at her kitchen table drinking coffee when she was killed. Aitra, Damon, and Damani were in their bedroom, still in their bed. The coroner determined that they all died from gunshot wounds to the head. The shooter was so close to Deborah that she suffered 1 gunshot wound that caused part of her brain tissue to be blown away. At around 5:30 or 6 that morning, Darren Williams and Horace Barnes arrived at the residence of Ida Moore, where Lisa Brown was also present. Williams, who was an acquaintance of both women, used his telephone. He then asked Moore for a ride, which she agreed to do so, and told Barnes to go pick up someone. Burns returned 5 to 10 minutes later with Tyquan Audrey Cox, or Lil Fee, a member of the Rollin 60 Crips known for his brutal ways, and the group left in Moore's van, with Moore driving, Brown in the passenger seat, and the 3 men in the back. After stopping for some gas, Williams directed him to 59th in Los Angeles and began looking for an address he had written on a piece of paper. When he had the located house in question, he told Moore to park down the street and leave the engine running. After they parked, Brown heard one of the men say, "We're gonna kill everybody in that house." Williams told Burns to stay behind while he and Little Fee got out and walked towards Alexander's residence. Brown did not see any weapons at the time. However, Moore had seen a big gun in the back of the van when they stopped for gas, and Lil Fee carried something wrapped in a jacket as he left. She also saw that Williams, he had a handgun in his waistband. After Williams and Lil Fee entered the house, the 2 women heard the sound of gunfire. 2 or 3 minutes later, Williams came running back to the van, holding a handgun and telling Moore to leave. Lil Fee, he followed about a minute or 2 later with the rifle in his hands. As he entered the van, he said, "I just blew that bitch's head off, so drive." Moore then quickly drove away. Several other people witnessed relevant events. LaShawn Driver lived 1 or 2 doors away from the opposite side of the street. At around 7:30 a.m., she was returning home when she saw 2 men enter the Alexander home, and then she heard approximately 5 gunshots. After one of the men came out, she heard another series of shots. The second individual, whom she identified as Lil Fee, then left the house, carrying a rifle, and both men went down the street. Deborah Alexander's 14-year-old son Neil and her grandson Ivan Scott were in the house when Williams and Lil Fee entered. Neil woke when he heard a scream and the sound of a shot. He saw a man standing in his sister Diatra's room holding a rifle. The man was facing the opposite direction towards his sister's bed. Neil jumped on his back and started fighting with him. The men then hit him in the face, and Neil ran through the back door. Other than family members, he saw no one else in the house. Ivan also awoke to gunshots and ran into the closet. From that vantage point, he saw his uncle Neil run down the hallway and heard an ensuing struggle. He also glanced at a man, but he could not identify him, but he did see that he was carrying a rifle. Upon return to the van, Williams and Lil Fee told Moore to drive away and eventually had her stop on Vermont Avenue and Gage Street and enter a building known as the Vermont Club. 1 or 2 hours later, Moore saw Williams at the home of James Kennedy. Williams gave her $50 to purchase some personal items for him and to pay for gas. Later on that day, she saw him again. This time, he was wearing new clothes and jewelry. At around 9 a.m., Brown received a telephone call from Williams, who directed her to bring his car to the Vermont Club. When she arrived, Lil Fee was also there. She saw someone hand him a rifle over the fence and he put it in the trunk of the car. Brown then took Lil Fee to an apartment building where he took the rifle after wrapping it in a jacket. Williams later gave Brown $20. That afternoon, Lil Fee purchased a 1975 Cadillac, paying $3,000 for it in cash. James Kennedy was a personal friend of Lil Fee, Williams, and Burns through gang association. On the morning of August 31st, Lil Fee bought him a semi-automatic 30 caliber carbine wrapped in a jacket and told him to destroy it. He also asked Kennedy to have his sister watch the jacket because it had gunpowder on it. Kennedy took the jacket to his sister, but he did not destroy the rifle. Instead, put it in some bushes near his residence. On September 27th, Kennedy was the subject of a narcotics investigation during which he revealed the location of the weapon to law enforcement officers. After Lil Fee's arrest, an acquaintance, Cassandra Hines, spoke to him in jail. Lil Fee asked if the police had found a gun he had given to Kennedy, but she did not know for certain. In the course of their investigation, police received empty shell casings and spent bullets from the vicinity of each body. Ballistics testing determined that all came from the same semi-automatic 30 caliber carbine Lil Fee gave James Kennedy. The prosecutors had what they needed to prove him guilty, but his criminal background definitely solidified the case even further. The prosecution presented evidence of 2 robberies Lil Fee was involved in as a juvenile. In May of 1981, Rasha Liberty was pulled from her car by Lil Fee and another teenager as she waited for a young kid after school. While threatening Liberty with the gun, Lil Fee took her vehicle and led police on a high-speed chase for half an hour through the city streets of Los Angeles, stopping only when he hit a telephone pole. The police recovered a 32 caliber revolver from the driver's side of the car. 1 month earlier, Lil Fee and a companion also robbed 3 junior high school students. He had 2 of them with his fist and a piece of a mop handle and demanded money from all 3 of them. The defense, they offered evidence of Lil Fee's upbringing and school environment. He had been virtually abandoned by an early age by his mother, who had a drinking problem and had gone to prison for bank robbery. He and his younger brother and sister had been raised by his 65-year-old great-grandmother, who he felt was somewhat strict. One of Lil Fee's junior high school teachers described him as skilled in athletics and capable of achieving greatness. However, peer pressure from the neighborhood gangs was a serious distraction for male students, particularly those who did not have strong role models in their lives. One of the junior high school administrators also felt Lil Fee had been a good student until it appeared that he had joined a local gang. He then began having behavior problems, which led to his expulsion. However, none of that mattered to the judge, calling Lil Fee one of the most dangerous killers he had ever encountered, before sentencing him to death for the 1984 execution-style murders. The judge said, "It's in the court's belief that the defendant is a danger and menace to society, that he is presently without any moral fiber, willing to prey on the weak and the helpless, and killing innocent and murder children." Lil Fee, who was described by the judge as the out-questioned the actual killer, sat quietly as the judge meted out the death sentence. Alexander and his family members, who had often cried out in emotion during the court proceedings, also remained silent, although several fought back tears. Terrence Barnes was also sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for his role in the killings. Based on the statements from Williams, the prosecution believed that Lil Fee and 2 other members of the gang were hired for $60,000 to kill women and her family who lived just 2 doors away from Mr. Alexander's South Central Los Angeles home. Williams told investigators that the woman had filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the bar after she was partially paralyzed in 1983 in a barroom brawl. But here's the thing, the Rollin 60 Crip members misread the address and ended up at Alexander's home. Lil Fee's attorney said he's a very young man. I don't think he understands the seriousness of what's happened to him. Look, rest in peace to all parties involved. Nobody deserves to die like that. That's just one example of the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crip ruthless race. And trust, these guys have a lot of other similar stories attached to their history. But first, let's address some history to fully get some insight to who this gang really is. History of the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips. To fully understand the history of the Rollin 60 Crips, we have to go back to the 70s. Matter of fact, we have to go back a few decades further to the 1950s. Los Angeles has a prominent timeline of excellence that commercially made California a place to move to, or at least plan a trip to see what the state had to offer. Capitol Records was built in 1956, the Grammy started in 1959, and today stands as one of the biggest events of the year. The Walk of Fame was established in the 1960s, and the Dodger Stadium opened in 1962. But in the background of all that, something sinister was going on in the city. Because by the 1950s, unemployment among Black Americans in Los Angeles had doubled from the prior decade, and even the ones with money were limited to live in certain areas due to redlining in the city, which basically built invisible walls that minorities were unable to move to. In addition, the cops were blatantly corrupt and racist, which made living conditions that much harder. These conditions birthed gangs like the Slausons, the Farmers, the Businessmen, Gladiators, and the Rebel Rousers, but there still wasn't any true leaders to give these guys the guidance they needed. But all that quickly changed after the Ross riots of 1965.
Man said to me today that all this would not have happened if the Negroes had been treated differently, and he said, if you treat somebody like a mad dog, he's going to behave like a mad dog. Is that a little too extreme for you, or do you believe that?
Well, I have to go along with that.
3,500 people were arrested, resulting in the politicization of essentially the whole Black community. The results of the riot charged the insane growth of the Los Angeles chapter of the Black Panther Party.
California Penal Code Section 12020 through 12027, and also the Second Amendment of the Constitution guarantees the citizen a right to bear arms on public property.
The presence of the Panthers was responsible for a lot of peace in the community at the time. They did food drives, gave lessons, and overall gave a sense of togetherness in the area. But all that, it was unfortunately put to an end due to an FBI informant who had infiltrated the Black Panthers. Sadly, the LA chapter of the Black Panther Party was in fact partially founded by an FBI informant. Aware of efforts to promote the Free Huey campaign in LA, the FBI ordered informant Earl Anthony to encourage the Panthers to create a Southern California chapter.
Police say there was sniper fire throughout the early morning hours, so they moved in cautiously.
Police and Black Panthers clash in Houston, New Orleans, and other cities.
The Black Panther police
In the
shootout
pre-dawn hours in Chicago today, police and Negroes fought a pitched battle.
The well-educated, middle-class Black man, Earl Anthony, was manipulated by FBI into serving as an informant, and by the late 1960s, the targeted destruction of the Black political organizations in the city and the liquidation of the Black Panther parties in particular would result in retrenchment of gang violence in the community. Because by the late 1960s, the Crips were birthed, and they already had a heavy presence in Los Angeles. Over the years, the West Side Crips, which was founded by some prominent members, a few of them included Stanley Tookie Williams, Donald Sweatback Archie, and Ricardo Bub Sims, started branching off into more geographically specific neighborhood groups. And by 1975, factions of the original Crip gang, the West Side Crips, formed the Rollin 60 Crips. So there's different theories on how the name was derived, and at the time, many of the gang's names were after streets in their respective neighborhoods. One theory stated that 60th Street rolled through the entire neighborhood, which today extends 27 blocks south from 48th Street to 75th Street, and west from Western Avenue to Overhill Drive. And these niggas rode through the city, making other gangs look silly. Because of their enormous size and numbers, they've been able to dominate areas outside their traditional neighborhood as well. For example, during the 1980s, members of the RSCS would travel north across town to Water on Wheels skating rink, located in a rival Schoolyard Crips neighborhood. It's rumored that at times, the Schoolyard Crips couldn't do anything about their presence, and they would have to retreat south across Venice Boulevard into their turf, where large numbers of RSC members would visit the skating rink. And at times, the Schoolyard Crips would attend drive-by shootings with the RSC members hanging out in front. But every weekend, the 60s would still return, provoking additional shootings. This rivalry, man, it's been going on with them for years, and it still stands to this day. But the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips have a long list of rivals they're known to go to war with one basically dividing the city. Rivals of the Rollin 60 Crips. One of their geographical blood rivals would be the Van Ness Gangsters, up north. Since RC members attended Crenshaw High School, north of Slauson, they often classed with VNGs. Because the VNGs are a smaller gang with less membership, the RCs have been able to dominate the school population, even though school is outside their turf. Other rivals of the 60s include the Inglewood Bloods, the Inglewood Family Bloods, Crenshaw Mafia Bloods, the Harvard Park Brims, the Rollin 20 Neighborhood Bloods, the Black Peace Stones, and they have a deadly war going on with every section of the Hoovers, which we'll talk about a little bit later. They also go at it with the 5-1 Trouble Gangster Crips, Avalon Gangster Crips, and occasionally they even get into it with the Rollin 40s. But there's one rivalry that tops all these, and it's the longest standing war that's responsible for a lot of bodies on both sides. This war right here, it reshaped the course of most gangs in Los Angeles. It divided them. You either had to pick a side. Go ahead and take a guess which one it was. War with the A-Trey gangster Crips. The war with the Rollin 60s and the A-Trey gangster Crips kind of makes you wonder what the state of gang culture would be like today if the war between them had never started. Both gangs have branched off from the original West Side Crips, so they start off as allies, and being geographically right next to each other, these cats were close. They would often party together, visit each other's neighborhoods, and would often fight rival gangs together. And if there was ever any internal beef, it would also be decided with the fight, and two gang members would keep it pushing. But one situation played out completely out of the norm due to a new member of the A-Trey gangster Crips.
Brothers came, beat BB up, they were 60s, broke his rib, threw him in the trash can. Homies still offended, we gotta fight Friday. After school, we gotta fight. Friday, homies, head up. That's what we usually do. Them is our type, 60s is our dogs. We ain't tripping. Head up, handle that beef, squash it, step on. Fatty started fighting with Tyrone. Tyrone's brother was Big Rick, OG 60, rider, moneymaker, hustler, thug motherfucker. Him and Fatty fighting. Boom, bad, boom, both big youngsters. Boo, bad, boo, bad, 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 boo. Squalling. Fool named Daryl Oaks, the hood just recruited. He was originally from 9-0. Went around the corner, got the strap. The homie. Came back. He was on the hood like 2 days. He thought it was something more serious than just the fisticuffs. And that's all it was. And it's 79. Ooh, this is 70s. It's September 79. Man, it's still the 70s. It's all about this, fool. Fool come back with the heat. Tell Fatty move, dump. Boom, boom. Kill Tyrone. Shoot him in the head and the chest. Shoot Bogart. Boom, from the 60s in the stomach. Rest of them break. We all break too. We're like, damn. Man, what you tripping on? 60s coming to the hood though. Big Rick, the OG, Babyface, Baby Huey, Motor Mouse, 60s, OGs, killers. All they want is to shoot her. Kill their brother. They ain't tripping. Like, man, we want the motherfucker to kill my brother. That's what Big Rick said. We was like, man, we don't know him. We didn't. He just started claiming the hood in 2 days. We couldn't give him up. We didn't know the motherfucker. Fools them took it as a sign of us saying we ain't giving him up. We threw a big meeting, big sidewinder, Keystone, all them from the 60s, Big Joe Rat, Mumbles, Mumpy. Threw a big meeting at the park. The meeting became a big gang fight. Fell into name calling, disrespect. People started getting hit, bombed on. It turned to a big gang fight. Pigs came, helicopter 40 feet off the ground. Ran everybody off. From that point, September 27th, 1979, the Rollin 60s and the A-Trays have been mortal enemies.
This rivalry is responsible for the first Crip-on-Crip rivalry in gang history. This feud spilled over into surrounding neighborhoods as well. Most gangs, they started pledging allegiance to one or the other. You was either rolling with the Rollin 60s or you was moving with the A-Trey gangster Crips. Gangs who aligned themselves with the Rollin 60s adapted the Neighborhood Crips and also the Deuces card. And gangs who aligned themselves with the A-Trey gangster Crips adapted the Gangster Crips movement. Also the Treys. This would be the most intense rivalry between any gang in Los Angeles, and the history of Los Angeles at that. Although there are longer rivalries in Los Angeles among gangs, like the ones between White Fence and El Hoyo Marvella, which goes back to the 1920s, the conflict between the Rollin 60s and the A-Trey gangsters has been more violent, especially during the period of 1980 and 1995. But that beef and hatred toward each other can still be seen in recent times. At approximately 3:30 p.m. on May 19th of 2005, A-Trey gangster Crip members Derek Boston and Joe Nash committed a drive-by shooting at a residence in South Los Angeles known to be frequented by a rival gang, the Rollin 60 Crips. At around 6:05 p.m. that evening, Boston was standing on the corner of 74th and Dinker with fellow gang members Willie Richard, Deontay Douglas, and Tory Williams, when two black males with braided hair and white t-shirts drove by in a white Acura with no license plates. One of the occupants in the car yelled, "Fuck A-Trays, y'all gotta move." Less than a minute later, the Acura returned and a front seat passenger leaned out and fired several shots at the group, hitting Boston and Richard. Thankfully, all parties survived, but that still shows you how this war has touched multiple generations. This rivalry is discussed more in Monster Cody's book, Monster, Autobiography of an LA Gang Member, and Donald Baker's book, titled Crips. This war has died out over the years, but trust, these guys definitely still hate each other. Hopefully there'll be some neutral standing in the future, But what do you guys think though? Will the Rollin 60 Crips and the HA gangsters ever be in good standing again? Or is it fuck each other for life? Y'all let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. War with the Hoovers. The war with the 60s and the Hoovers is another widely known war that has taken the lives of multiple people on both sides. The crazy part is, just like the HA gangster Crips, the Rollin 60s and the Hoovers used to actually be really close. You find them on each other's blocks, functioning together, and often they fight rival gangs together. But all that started to change when the war with the HAs and the Rollin 60s kicked off, and what eventually grew from small fights grew to shootouts between both gangs. This led to the death of a member of the Rollin 60s, and the two gangs have been enemies ever since. Even up until today, they stand as rivals and bitter enemies against each other. A prime example of this deadly war played out with the well-known Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crip member, Zealous Fields, when he went on a killing spree against the Hoovers in 2008. At approximately 2 a.m. on April 27, 2008, gunshots woke Keon Harris in an apartment where he was standing on Figueroa Street. He got up from bed and looked out the window, but saw nothing. Later that morning, at around 6:30 a.m., he discovered Wallace's body on the steps leading to the front of the building. Wallace had been shot 6 times. Police had no suspects in Wallace's death until 11 days later, when Monisha Carbon walked into the 77th Street Community Police Station and told Detective Eric Caution that she had information about a homicide that may have occurred on a porch on Figueroa Street. Carbon told the detectives that 1 or 2 weeks earlier, she was in an apartment where members of the Rollin 60 Crip criminal gang congregate. She was pretending to be asleep at approximately 10 p.m. when several other people in the apartment, including Fields and Jacob Cray, also known as J Hood, began talking about a murder. Carbon said Fields did most of the talking and kept bringing it up like he was nervous or something. She told Detective Crossman, Fields is like, hey cuz, you know we just went over there, we just chipped some nigga. Carbon also overheard Fields say, me, Scooby, J Hood, we was all in the car. Like we was over there and we chipped some nigga on the porch, cuz. Fields explained that they shot Wallace because she said he threw up some gang signs that wasn't the 60s. She quoted saying, we was like boom, 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 and then we skirted off. Detective Crossman asked Carbon, who do you think did the shooting? Did they say who actually shot? Carbon replied, Fields. I know Fields shot, and I think Jacob shot too. Carbon told Detective Crossman that later that night, at around midnight or 1 a.m., Fields and several others left the apartment and went back to the scene of the shooting. They returned a couple hours later, and that's when Carbon overheard Fields tell Jacob, oh yeah, we just passed by there and cuz still laid out there on the porch. Like don't nobody know he dead. Like motherfuckers think he homeless or asleep. Like he just laid out there and then nobody did nothing. Nigga, it's been a few hours and nobody did shit. When Detective Crossman asked Carbon if she knew what type of gun had been used in the shooting, Carbon told her that she had played with the gun's magazine or clip that evening and described the bullets to the detective. She said 3 or 4 of the bullets were missing. She also said officers could likely find a gun in a dope spot or a gang hangout with Fields or another gang member. At that point, the cops had exactly what they needed, a suspect for the murder, but they still hadn't caught Fields yet, so a spree continued on. On the morning of May 1st, 2008, 4 days after killing Wallace, Derek Boston and Demetrius stood in the front porch of Boston's home. A single man approached him wearing a hoodie. As the man drew a gun from his waistband, the hood fell off. The man said, "You are some tramps," using a derogatory term for members of the HA gangster Crips, and started shooting at Boston and Thomas from about 5 feet away. Thomas tried to duck behind a wall, but he was shot in the back. Boston ran towards the man and tried to grab the gun, but he was shot in the head. Both Boston and Thomas survived the shooting, but Thomas was paralyzed from below his chest. Witnesses and forensics analysis placed Fields as the shooter, but this nigga still wasn't done. Timothy Bollinger was a member of the 7-4 Hoover Criminals and went by the moniker Groove. On February 6, 2009, Bollinger and his female friend, Quincy Leftwich, were walking Leftwich's daughter to school. On her way back home, a white Camaro approached a stop sign and waited as Bollinger and Leftwich walked towards the car. The driver said to him, "Don't I know you from somewhere?" Bollinger replied, "I don't know, do you?" While Bollinger talked to the driver, Leftwich walked around the back of the car and noticed 2 other people in the passenger and back seats. As she walked to the middle of the next block, Leftwich heard gunshots and someone say, "All right then, Groove." She then dropped to the ground and watched as Ballinger ran down the street, chased by the Camaro. The front passenger, a dark-skinned male in his 20s, held the gun out the window and Leftwich heard 5 more gunshots. Leftwich then lost sight of Ballinger as she turned the corner, but she heard more gunshots. Several minutes later, Leftwich ran in the direction she saw Ballinger and the Camaro turn. Before she could find Ballinger, a police officer approached her though. Together, they discovered Ballinger dead in a residential driveway. Leftwich could not identify the shooter from a photogenic lineup or a live lineup, but she testified at trial that the person sitting in the front passenger seat of the Camaro had the same skin tone as Fields. Fast forward to December 30th of 2009. A police detective interviewed Tony Cray, the brother of Jacob Cray, and also a member of the Rollin 60 Crips. Cray, who was in custody, told the detective that the morning of the Ballinger murder, Fields and the Rollin 60 Crip gang members, Mark Thomas, picked up Cray in a white Camaro. Thomas drove, Fields sat in the front seat, and Cray sat in the back seat. Cray said, "We were just driving around, man, and I didn't even know he had a gun. And I seen some boy and girl crossing the street, and he called him over to the car." Cray said the boy told Fields he knew him from somewhere, but the girl walked behind the car and kept going. Fields asked the boy, "What they call you?" And he tried to shoot, but the gun jammed. The boy seen what happened, and he took off. Cray continued, Fields hopped out the car and chased him down. And when we turned the corner, we just seen Fields chasing that dude. The dude was just running, and Fields was just chasing after him. And then we heard a few shots. It was like boom, boom. And then we got back into the car. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? I'm like, man, drop me off. At the offset of the interview, Cray said, but if I tell y'all anything and I go to the county, man, you know what's gonna happen to me up there? Y'all don't understand. Y'all just want me to tell so y'all can have a case and everything. Cray said that he would rather just go out taking a rap than have my own homies kill me in jail. He continued, fuck it, just book me. Cause I ain't gonna be no telltale, end up getting dealt with anyways. Eventually, Cray told the detectives that he did not want to go to jail for a murder he did not commit. The detectives then assured Cray that she turned off the recording devices on the table, but a video camera continued recording their conversation. Cray said, even though I'm telling the truth, but it's still I'm paranoid though. And now I got to worry about this shit when I go to jail. Cray eventually pleaded guilty to attempted murder of Ballinger and testified at trial against Fields. In the end, due to testimony from several witnesses, forensics evidence, and testimony from several officers and his fellow gang members, the trial court sentenced Fields to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus 130 years to life. So y'all know about the deadly wars these niggas have engaged in over the years and the insane situations that a lot of members have been in. So let's go over the danger rating to see where the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips stand amongst other gangs. Danger rating of the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips. The Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips are going to receive a danger rating of a 9.8 out of 10 based off of the gang's long history of violence in Los Angeles and well beyond. These guys have a reputation for being the most militant, violent, and ruthless gang in the city. Yeah, guys like Lil Fee and many other members made the Rollin 60s one of the most feared, with a lot of rival gangs avoiding their area in order to stay safe. Yeah, if you a op and you see 6-0 coming, you might as well get to running, cause that little nigga's a gunman. Bars, nigga. Nah, look, y'all heard a few stories about these guys, but it's way more than a few that I found that are way too graphic to even put on YouTube. But that's just my opinion though. Would y'all want higher or lower? Y'all let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. And give me some reasons and some stories on why. Prominent figures. The Rollin 60s have a lot of members who have made the gang one of the most feared forces in Los Angeles. They have known jackers, robbers, killers, dealers, and everything in between that. But during my research, I found a long list, and I mean long, of over 200 members who are no longer with us. So rest in peace to them. A few of them include Tyrone Henderman, who passed on March 8, 1979. His death sparked an intense war with the A-Trade gangsters that lasted decades and still lingers on to this day. Kashawn Huggabug Corbin, who passed on October 16 in 2011 after he was shot on the block of 11th Avenue when 3 men got out of an SUV and opened fire on him while he was riding a mini bike. Kelly Bodie Jemerson, who passed on March 16, 1995 after he was beaten to death during the Soul Train Music Awards after a party at El Rey Theater on Wilshire Boulevard by multiple people. Damian Dowman Nicholas, also known as Shady Blue 4, he was shot and killed in Palmdale, and it's alleged that Jap 5 from the Hoover criminals were responsible for this death, but it's all speculation at this point. A few other members rest in peace include Sandman, who was a rapper and known 60 Crip member, Shamrock, Poochie, aka Mumpy Poo, Kenny Mac 3, aka Baby Mac, Kev Rock, and He-Man. Man, rest in peace to them. And y'all let me know if any other members who are no longer with us, that their lives live on. It's one figure from the gang though that did so much, not only for his gang, but for the community. And for that, he definitely needs his own section of this video. Nipsey Hussle, our Thundercat, who passed on March 31st, 2019.
If I grew up on the same block you grew up on, we had the same trials and tribulations, but you became successful and I became a failure, made me feel a certain way about myself. Because we had the same, we dealt the same deck of cards. You know what I mean? So I feel like my success affects the people closest to me the most. A person that don't know me might root for me, you know what I mean, and be happy for me. A person that know me and come from the same environment, had the same cards dealt it in, that keep going to jail, don't have no money, never made their parents proud or their mama proud, never did anything that they could look in the mirror and be proud of. You know what I mean? It make you feel a certain way, and it's intense. And that shit manifests into jealousy, hate, violence. You know what I mean? It's deep.
Hermes Joseph Ascadon was born on August 15, 1985, and raised in the Crenshaw district of South Central Los Angeles by his mother and father, who was a Eritrean war refugee who came to the United States after fleeing the then ongoing Eritrean War of Independence. Although his parents tried to stem him away from the troubled life, Nipsey Hussle still became a product of his environment. At the age of 14, he left home and joined the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips and started to make a name for himself from that point on. And it wasn't just the streets though. Nipsey had a strong urge to push towards a music career, and through his drive and ability to outwork pretty much all his peers, he's seen a lot of success in it. In 2002, at the age of 17, Hussle would join Butter Vision, a creative multimedia digital guerrilla movement led by Dexter Brown, where he was part of the BV Boy Sampler, Beats and Babes Volume 1 DVD, and Shades of Butter Volume 1 DVD. In addition, Hussle became known for his numerous mixtapes, including his Bullets Ain't Got No Name series, The Marathon Continues, and Crenshaw, the last of which rapper Jay-Z bought 100 copies for $100 each. After much delay, his debut studio album, Victory Lap, was released in 2008 with critical acclaim and commercial success. And on top of all that, was nominated for the Best Rap Album in the 61st Grammy Awards in 2019. But don't get it twisted. Throughout all his years of growing as an artist, Nipsey also grew as an activist. When Ascadon was 19, his father took him and his brother on a 3-month trip to Eritrea. Nip said he's seen a whole new world and a way of living for his people. The buildings were different, the people were different, but the spirit was just as strong, claiming he got into more fights out there in the past 3-month span than he ever did in America. This inspired Nipsey Hussle to bring a change to his local community, pushing him to become a community activist with an entrepreneurial spirit. Hussle wanted to focus on giving solutions and inspiration to black men like him and myself. He denounced gun violence through his music, influence, and community work. In addition, he spoke openly about his experience with gang culture, actually pushing young youth away from the life. But his activism, it wasn't just with the youth. Nip was pushing for unity with everybody. Affiliated with the Rollin 60 Crips, he often performed and worked with rival blood affiliated rappers to set an example. He funded improvements to neighborhood schools and spent time with students, also participating in panels about growing up in the area and the influence of the gang culture. Also, Hussle started a co-working environment which he named Victor 90, because from his experience, he believed the Crenshaw area was being underserved and that young people would benefit from the community workspaces. Hussle was also intimately involved in the planning and advisory stages of the Destination Crenshaw project, which would showcase the history and the culture of blacks in the neighborhood. City Council member Marquise Harrison Dotson said Hussle was in the earliest conversations on the project and was an integral part in the project's branding. On top of all that, in March of 2019, Hussle had gotten in contact with officials from LAPD to arrange a meeting with him and Rock Nation so they could talk about what they could do to help prevent gang violence in Los Angeles. The meeting, it had been set up to take place on April 1st. But unfortunately, Nipsey Hussle was murdered on March 31st, 2019. On March 31st, 2019, Nipsey Hussle was shot at least 10 times in the parking lot of his own store, Marathon Clothing, in South Central Los Angeles, California, at about 3:18 p.m. 2 others wounded. All 3 victims were transported to a hospital, but Nipsey Hussle was unfortunately pronounced dead at 3:55. He was just 33 years old. Police identified the then 29-year-old Eric Holder as a suspect. Investigators believe that Holder was known to the rapper and that the shooting was a possibility motivated by a personal matter. On April 2nd of 2019, Holder was arrested by the Los Angeles Police Department and was being held in solitary confinement. A month later, on May 9th, a jury charged Holder on 1 count of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, and assault with a firearm, and 1 count of possession of a firearm by a felon. On July 6, 2022, Holder was found guilty of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted voluntary manslaughter relating to the injuries caused by the bystander. Hussle's memorial service was held on April 11 in 2019 at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California. Former President Barack Obama praised the former rapper for his work in the community, writing a tribute, while most folks in the community look at the neighborhood where he grew up and only see gangs, bullets, and despair. Nipsey saw potential. The 25-mile funeral procession to the Forest Lawn Memorial Park went through the streets of South Central Los Angeles, including Watts. The crowds lined the streets demonstrated the impact he had on the community. Gang leaders saw how Nipsey Hussle resonated with the young gang members and used the opportunity to curtail violence in their own ranks. A cross-section of gangs marched together at the memorial for Nipsey Hussle and later held summits between LA and Compton. Lastly, at the 62nd Grammy Awards in 2020, 2 Grammy Awards for the songs Racks in the Middle and Higher were awarded to Nipsey Hussle in the Best Rap Album Performance and the Best Rap Song Performance as well. It's honestly just sad that Nipsey couldn't reap all the rewards from his hard work before his passing. Rest in peace to Nipsey Hussle. He was definitely a prominent figure for not only the Rollin 60 Crips, but in California as a whole. Yeah, rest in peace, but let's do something different in the comments. If Nipsey Hussle made some type of impact in your life, directly or indirectly, let it be known in the comments. Whether it was taking a picture, words of encouragement, a story, his music, or whatever, let it be known in the comments. In addition to Nipsey Hussle though, the Rollin 60s have numerous other members who have made the gang so prominent today. We already mentioned Lil Fee, but dude was known for a lot more than that spree he went on, because once he was locked up on death row for the murders, Lil Fee stabbed original Westside Crip co-founder Stanley Tookie Williams at San Quentin in 1988. This act was depicted in the 2014 film Redemption starring Jamie Foxx, but many suggest that the incident didn't play out as it did in the film. There's also another prominent member though, who not only made headlines for the Rollin 60s, but put a target on the gang's back due to his activities, and we're for sure about to talk about all that. But first, let's mention some other prominent members, including Keith Stone Thomas, who was a member of the Rollin 60s. He was well known for his robberies and hustle abilities, while running multiple drug operations. Unfortunately, he was killed on January 30th in 1992. With their hands bound behind their back, the bodies of Thomas and Chapman were found in a Ford Explorer that was abandoned in an avocado grove in an upscale Rancho Duarte area at the base of the San Gabriel Mountains, in an area of $600,000 homes. Thomas, known as Stone, was one of the oldest leaders of the Rollin 60 Crips, which has roots in Crenshaw district dating back to the 1970s, and he was dubbed the OG, an original gangster. Thomas used his drug trade earnings to live in a gated home in the Windsor Hills, authorities said, and he was the main supplier to Dorset Crips, a local gang in the area. Using fingerprints found in an Explorer and information from informants, sheriff detectives arrested 4 Dorset Crip members on April 29th: Anthony Fitzpatrick, Lamar McDaniels, Travis Berry, and J.C. Ware. Thomas, who had earlier given the Dorset members marijuana valued on the street level at more than $10,000, returned to Duarte to collect payment for the first load and drop off another. But the gang members sold the drugs, spent the money, and were waiting to kill Thomas. The sad thing about this case is that Thomas and Fitzpatrick were personal friends. Thomas had given him money, given him clothes, let him stay in his house, and the results of those acts of kindness were repaid by his execution. Definitely rest in peace to Keystone. That's just really another example of how cutthroat the gang life is, especially if you're 60. Anyways, Big U was another member who helped put the gang on the map. Today he's still widely known in Los Angeles, managing artists and doing a lot of other entrepreneurial work. Other known members include Key Rock, Big Cat, The Warlocks, Keystone, Snoop Dogg, Babyface, Motormouth, Ricky Slew, Petey Wack, OG Mumpy, Sky, Big Cass, Pretty Boy, Cowboy, and Kev Mac, who was a known gangster and hustler from the 60s. Today he runs a YouTube channel titled Kev Mac Videos, where he does a lot of interviews from different OGs around Los Angeles. That's actually Well, I found a lot of this information on the 60s, so if y'all want a more in-depth history lesson, or if y'all want to know exactly where these dudes came from and any other gangs, y'all need to tap in with his channel ASAP. Tap in ASAP, like today, right now, after this video, of course. Also, there's Gerald Dwight Collins, who was the known member of the Rollin 60s. He was convicted for the murder of Karen Toshima. And usually back then, if this was just a murder in the ghettos of Los Angeles County, it would have just went over as another day in the hood and been swept under the rug. But this definitely wasn't the case. Karen Toshima was a graphic artist from Long Beach, and she was struck in the head by a stray bullet fired by Collins on January 30th, 1988. Across a busy street in the Westwood section of Los Angeles, California, prosecutors said Collins was aiming at a rival Mainsfield gangster Crip member, Tyrone Swain. After a night on life support systems, Toshima died at the UCLA Medical Center. She was shot down as she was strolling with her boyfriend on the streets of Westwood Village, a popular and affluent entertainment, dining, and shopping district that borders the UCLA campus on Los Angeles' west side. Her slaying sparked a public outcry among residents of the predominantly white area who previously felt immune from the gang violence that plagued the poor, minority neighborhoods in South and East Los Angeles. Following Toshima's death, stories of gang killings began to dominate headlines, and politicians and law enforcement came under enormous pressure to crack down on gang violence. Karen Toshima's homicide put the gang problem at a very high public agenda and has remained high since then. In the year 1988, gang-related murders were occurring at a rate of nearly 2 per day, with many innocent bystanders, with 257 people slain in gang-related violence up to that date. In response to the public outcry, police beefed up their presence in Westwood, triggering yet another outcry from Black and Hispanic leaders who charged that police were not responding equally to murders in South and East Los Angeles. However, following Toshima's death, police began Operation Hammer, a series of massive and periodic sweeps of gang members in primary poor sections of the city. But it was too late. The Rollin 60s had members and young foot soldiers who continued to put in work for the gang. Some rappers who have been putting in work for the 60s is definitely going to include G.I. Joe OMG. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, so rest in peace to him. It's also Corrupt, CJ Mack, and Sandman Agassi, who I also mentioned earlier, who passed away as well, so rest in peace to him as well. Other rappers include Jay Stone, Pac-Man the Gunman, Brian Hart's Baby, Shooter, Benelli, and Brick Baby. It's also YNBJC and New Jack, who are upcoming youngsters, and these niggas is definitely dropping some fire-ass music. So if you ain't heard of none of them, definitely tap in ASAP. Some out-of-state rappers include Sue Surf, Dust Lucane, P-Way Longway, oh, and Quando Rondo. Psych, that nigga's a mark, keep going. I also found some information about Lil Baby being from the hood too. Can someone confirm is this true or not, or is it just rumors? Let me know in the comments, let's have a conversation about it. Current state of the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips. When it comes to the current state of the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips, today, they still stand as one of the most feared and respected gangs in Los Angeles. Despite multiple unjustified gang injunctions being placed on the gang, they still continue to grow and thrive to this day. And with prominent members like Nipsey Hussle, who continue to put the 60s on the map all the way up until his passing, the gang is just as reputable as it's ever been. And the Rollin 60's growth is not just felt in California, but also around the nation, having subsets in a lot of different states. They have Rollin 60s in Oregon, Texas, Tennessee, New York, Oklahoma, Nevada, Florida, Georgia, Baltimore, New Jersey, and Alabama. Try to let me know if you're missing your state, man. Rep your state. That's it for the Rollin 60s though. But I want to leave y'all with my favorite Nipsey Hussle moment, or moments in this case. So I've been listening to Nip since like 2009. Yeah, nigga, I'm one of the day ones. Anyways, I was one of them niggas who only listened to all the local artists, so I was playing a lot of YG, J-Rod, and of course Nipsey Hussle. Well, I ended up graduating from Poly in 2010 and going to Fresno State afterwards. And yeah, look, I'm a Bulldog for life. But when I first went there, bruh, let me just say this nicely, I was really culture shocked. Look, I've learned and grown a lot, but it was a lot of Caucasian people in one place for me. And I just was not used to that shit at all. Like, bro, I'm from the east side of Long Beach, the grimiest part. So I just was not used to a lot of shit out there. But whenever I play Bullets Ain't Got No Name, I feel like I was home. Y'all say I want the bread, but then y'all settle for chips. Or even worse, a pack of peanuts if it's less of a risk. How many bosses took a loss sidetracked by a bitch? And how hard could you ball until your homies to flip? Snack now and ball later, that's the choice that I pick. That's why Slauson Boy Records is the #1 click, yeah. Bars, nigga. Nah, bruh, music kept me motivated, It got me through rough moments out there, but most importantly, it gave me the confidence I needed to take care of business out there and earn my degree. Whenever I was studying, I was listening to Nip. Whenever I was working, I was listening to Nip. Shit, when I was getting at bitches out there, it was Nip playing. So like I said, it wasn't just one Nipsey Hussle moment for me, and I'm pretty sure it's just like for all y'all, but he got me through a lot of moments that I truly appreciate that dude for. Anyways, that's it for the Neighborhood Rollin 60 Crips. Y'all got any crazy stories about these guys? Any close calls? Did I miss anything? Did I get anything wrong? Y'all let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation about it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you hustle today. Y'all stay safe and dangerous out there.